welcome to another episode of Coffee with Colleagues. And I am here with my dear friend and hospitality colleague, who actually is my first hotel representative I've had on the Coffee with Colleagues chat.
Wow.
Her name is Chelsea Harrington. Chelsea, welcome.
Hello, hello. Hi. I didn't know that I was your first hotel partner on here. That's very exciting.
Yeah. I've usually targeted folks that sit on my side, on the client side, or in the conference direct space or intermediary space. So, but we had such an amazing experience booking a program that it was signed just before the pandemic hit. And of course, because of the pandemic, we had to push, and we stayed very close for about a year and a half as we had to reschedule, reshape,
Right.
rebook, as we've all had to do the last couple of years. But you and I established a pretty tight relationship over that year and a half as we had to figure out and get creative how to take care of our mutual clients. So, something that stood out about you, Chelsea, was your passion for what you do. I think that was pretty much rewarded for your ability to get problem solved on your side of things. And so I can speak to that personally, but I'm glad to see how you flourished throughout the pandemic and continue to thrive within Hyatt. So I don't want to steal your thunder. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and I guess brief work description, but more personally, what makes Chelsea tick?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I could listen to that all day, but no, I mean, full credit truly goes to you. I had multiple people on my team say, wow, is it normal for the third party to fly all the way onto the property when not full service side of things, and you took that like out of your own pocket to make sure that everything was running smoothly, to be that liaison, to be that mediator between everybody, and it was just huge. So like, feelings totally mutual, right back at you. You're amazing. So thank you so much for all of your help, not just with that client, but just like everything in general regarding that deal, that partnership, and how how it really all connects within Hyatt, within CD. It's just it's awesome. So we're really happy with this partnership for sure. And so
You're too kind. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm speaking to you from my home in San Diego, as you know, and I have
your new home, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we finally pulled the trigger. Been looking for 5 years now, and as everyone knows, the housing market is just absolutely insane, but it had to be done. We definitely need a home, so we ended up purchasing in North County, San Diego, which is incidentally where I grew up, spent a lot of my childhood here, and so it's really nice to be able to come back and set roots here. And so I have been with Hyatt for, gosh, it's actually 10 years this May. Holy moly.
Wow.
How you're getting old when you're like, wait a minute, we're in the 2 digits now, right? Yeah, and yeah, I've been with Grand Hyatt Playa Carmen for over 3 years now, and that's the property I currently represent, as you know, and absolutely love my hotel. A little fun tidbit I like to share is that before I worked for Playa, I was at Park Hyatt Aviara. I actually got married and honeymooned at my hotel now. So I honeymooned at Grand Hyatt Playa. And
it's no wonder you're so passionate about it. You have a personal connection and a business connection to it. That's amazing.
That's right. I joke I'm a little extra biased is how I
there you go.
To my clients.
Well, it's one of the most beautiful hotels in Playa del Carmen from my perspective. You guys do a great job. I don't want to talk too much about the hotel. You guys can go research it on your own, but it's not to take away from your efforts or your job, but it's not that hard to sell a destination as beautiful as that. And with the team at the Hyatt, you've got a great property to be passionate about. So, but let's reverse it. What got you into hospitality in the first place? How did you decide to get to hospitality?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I can pinpoint it necessarily. I think that I've always loved travel since at a very young age. First time I was on a flight, I was 4 months old. I was actually born in Taiwan and grew up there for the first 10 years of my life before moving to Carlsbad. And I just did a whole lot of traveling back and forth when I was a kid. And the idea of like hotels always represented like fun and luxury and this kind of like really cool, like next level thing. And so, and I guess like in high school, there was a point where, you know, you start talking about what are you going to do? Like, what's your career path? And I had an ex-boyfriend at the time who mentioned that his sister is a hotel event planner, is how he had put it. I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I'd never heard of that before. I'm like, okay, so does she work with like brides, like weddings, like, you know, meetings? Like, how does all that work? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, but she's out in Vegas and she makes really good money. She just bought like a Mercedes or some car that like as a high schooler, you're like, oh my gosh, like dang, right? Yeah. And so, you know, I was just thinking, hey, that's pretty cool, you know, look into that. And so I kind of started putting feelers out and did some research, and ended up being that the family that I was babysitting for at the time, she had a connection to the San Diego Tourism Authority. And I just thought, okay, that's a good person to talk to, like, or good people. I walked around the office, and just by chance, the director of sales, Margie Sitton, was in the office that day, and she's an industry giant, known very locally as well. I think at the time she had been with Marriott for, gosh, like 20, 30 plus years. And I was not expecting to meet her. And if anything, at that point, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll do events. I didn't, you know the difference between sales versus event side of hotels. And yeah, we had a casual conversation. She looked at my resume. First thing she said was, oh, you're in the wrong sorority. She was in a sorority, I was in a sorority, and kind of made a little quip about that. Just casually talked for an hour. And she was like, listen, I like you a lot, and I think I see you in sales. And I was like, oh, okay, I you know, I'm open. And so she's like, I know some people, I'll put you in contact. And I was thinking, okay, you know, you hear this a lot, like I'll see what I can do. And I kid you not, the next day I had 3 different hotels in my inbox saying, you come highly recommended
Wow.
from Margie, we really want to meet you. And one of them was Grand Hyatt San Diego. So I definitely heard of Hyatt, and had, you know, heard lots of great things, and I knew we had several in San Diego. And so that I started, I graduated UCSD on a Saturday and started with Hyatt on Monday, and never looked
Wow.
back.
That's incredible. You know what I love about that story? It kind of the impact that a face-to-face meeting had in your career. You know, you sat down, you were able to sell yourself without really even selling yourself. You just had a conversation, but obviously you shone through. And I think sometimes is where, you know, people look for jobs or look for opportunities, and especially in today's digital world where Zoom calls and everything else are kind of you know, they're the norm. The ability to connect with someone on a face-to-face conversation could really, I mean, from what your story seems like, it was a launching point of your career. That's pretty incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's like you said, right? It's all about the connection, and you never know how far your web can reach, and who you know now, and how you might reconnect again down the line. So absolutely.
Well, I've told the story to you before, and I'm going to launch into it now because we had met once or twice, I think, and I had sent you an RFP, a request for proposal, for a group that was pretty much already committed to go to one of your competitors. Well, I sent it out at the same time, but by the time we really sat and talked about it, they had already decided to repeat at this property they had been at before. And to testify to your salesmanship, I sat down, we had a meeting at IMEX, one of our industry trade shows in Vegas. And I almost skipped the meeting because it was late in the day. I was running around.
Like
I had some things to
Thursday, the
do.
last day, I think.
Yeah, it was like it really was. It was like, you know, we're all pretty much tired after 3 days of the conference. And I said, you know what, I'm not gonna flake. I gave my word, I'm gonna go see her. We sat down and you're like, yeah, so about that group. And I'm like, yeah, no, you know, thanks for your interest, but they're pretty much already decided to go somewhere else. Yeah, you're like, all right, so about that group, let's talk about it for like, no, really, they're not, they're already committed. Okay, but we really want that group, and here's what we're prepared to do. And you were so convincing just to get an offer in front of this client, or I should say a rebid, because he already saw your offer.
Right.
You were determined. You wouldn't take no for an answer. And I thought it was, you know, you start to root for people because you see their passion behind it. And I could see your passion behind this, not only the hotel, but just your personal passion. And I said, okay, something's here. I've got to dig deeper and do a little bit more due diligence to get this bid in front of my client. So long story short, you know, they were pretty much going to sign at this other place. But because of your efforts, I got them to take a second look at your hotel. And after a site visit and a few, you know, couple more weeks of negotiation, here we are. We signed the contract, and that led to the group that we mentioned earlier in the call. So,
Right.
you know, if Margie was impressed, I was equally impressed with your ability to sell. And yeah, there's no reason why she saw you as suitable. There's a good reason, I should say, why she saw you suitable for sales, because you do a great job at it. So now you mentioned your passion for hospitality, but you know, you've got to admit the last 2 years have been a struggle. I mean, you know, you've had a solid job and you've kind of kept you weren't released or furloughed, to my knowledge, I don't think. But the industry itself, no matter where you fell in the chain, I'm on the intermediary side. My clients obviously stopped doing meetings. It was tough. How do you keep your passion? What do you do to kind of get yourself up every single day to keep at it in the midst of the struggle we've had in the last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's still a sore spot when you think about that early days of the pandemic, how one moment it was like you were rocking and rolling. And on a personal level, Q1 2020 was actually the absolute best, like highest achieving quarter of my entire career. To give you an idea, like mostly you finish your quarter, like you know, you're doing your job, you usually get to like 100%, 100 and let's say 120, 150%, and that's like a really awesome quarter, and you make your bonus and you're feeling really cool about yourself. I don't know what it was, combination of everything. I booked multiple buyouts, and even with the early days of the pandemic happening in the first like end of February, trickling, I was able to move all the groups to future years at a higher rate and retain a lot of the business. I ended the quarter at 519% of my quota. And then it all came crashing down. Literally 1 week before the end of the quarter, everything closed. It was like, forget about anything, forget about bonus, forget it, like we don't even know if you get to keep your job, right? And so that was a really crazy time. It was like you're just like, you're taking it every day by day. Like every week there's a new person getting furloughed from your team. Every day, every week, like something happens and you don't know if they're furloughed or they're laid off. For me, I was really fortunate to have remained on the team the entire time. We were cut down to 50% at one point, just working half days, trying to keep business that were the clients that were still talking to you during that time. And so, yeah, you had to turn to other things to take your mind off of things. And I mean, my husband even was like, man, I've never seen you this down, because I always had this, like my job, my outlet, like, this is a really big part of who I am. But then I turned to other things that, kept me going. So as you know, I foster a lot of dogs. And so I actually, during the pandemic, is when I created the Instagram page for it. So if anyone's on IG, I am the serial foster. Not to use this time to promo, but if you are a dog lover and you love
writing it down now.
Yeah, the serial foster. If you love wholesome foster dog content, to see the journey of all of them. So I thought, you know what, this is a cool time to document all the past fosters I've had and continue kind of jumping into them, because during the pandemic, one of the good things that happened was there was a big adoption boom. A lot of people wanted to get furry friends, and so we had a really high turnover rate. And anyway, long story short, today I actually just picked up, and let me see if I can show you. I wasn't planning on showing you, but let's see, there she is.
Aww.
This right
Adorable.
here, her name is Dewdrop, or Dewey, and she is foster number 55.
Holy mackerel, Chelsea. Now, I'm always curious about this. It's got to be tough after you've had them in your house and you've cared for them and nurtured them, to give them over to somebody, as much as you're happy to see them find a permanent home. Is there emotional connections you have that are tough to separate, or what?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the first question I get, is like, how do you give them back? As soon as people hear that I foster, like, what? How do you not have like 12 dogs in your home? And I've done it for so long now, of course it's different, but you just got to think about it in the greater picture of like how many more you can help. Because if I had kept one, I probably wouldn't have fostered as much as I have, or even the types of dogs. Because oftentimes when you foster, you take the dogs that are not super highly adoptable for one reason or another. And some of those dogs are dog aggressive. They can't be with other dogs, right? And so, being able to help those dogs was huge, makes a huge difference. So yeah, you certainly have ties to them, but at the time we, as you know, we didn't buy our house yet, and it was just easy to keep going. Now I guess we don't really have an excuse if we get one that's like the one. Yeah, we might have a foster film in our future, but my husband had it in his wedding vows. He did promise to allow me to bring home as many foster dogs as I wanted. So
That's adorable.
holding him to it.
Well, I think it's a peek inside your soul too, because you know I know you to be kind-hearted. I know you to have a big heart, and when you're doing something for a creature that can't do anything back for you except for you just passing along goodness into society, goodness into the world, I think it speaks volumes of your character and who you are as a person. So kudos to you. That's something pretty special. So that became a bit of an extra outlet for you during the downtime of the pandemic, I understand.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that was always a
Yeah.
passion of mine. I've been volunteering with the local rescue for, gosh, I want to say 8 years already. So yeah, that's
Okay.
something I've been doing. My first foster was in high school, actually. So it's something I've been doing for a long time, but it kind of took up a little bit more time in the time where we couldn't travel. And yeah, and as you know, I also picked up a new pandemic hobby of the national parks. So then
Oh, that's amazing.
once you were able to get going, like I think summer 2020 onward, that was a new passion as well with my little scratch off map.
Well, it's funny though too, because we're in the travel industry, but I think sometimes we limit our travel to our work trips, and we don't take enough time to do what we love to do, to be passionate about, the places that our clients are passionate about. They're coming to us in these beautiful destinations. Sometimes we get so stuck in our jobs that we forget to travel and get out ourselves. Talk a little bit about your checking off the national parks list. It seemed like every time I was emailing you during some of our exchanges for this one particular client, like, I'm going to be out of the office for the next 4 days. I'll be available, but I'm going to be at this national park. And then the next week it'll be another national park. I thought it was so cool. Tell me about what you've seen and some of your favorites.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's right. I'm sure I sent you our WhatsApp history and text history. You see lots of pictures. Yeah. Well, this is actually just one of those things again, right, where the pandemic kind of helped some people refocus and just take a step back. And for me, I think I told you this, I have a world scratch off map that I've been working on for a long time, but obviously that was out the window, which side remark, I was so bummed because we were supposed to take a family cruise to the Baltic in July 2020, and like imagine the surface area of scratching off Russia because we were supposed to go to St. Petersburg. But anyway, when that was no longer an option, it allowed me to rethink and say, hey, what about, we have national parks. I saw actually it was an ad, like when you're scrolling through social media, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I truthfully never gave it a second thought. I knew national parks existed, but when you're like, oh, here's the world, right? It forced you to look at the beauty that you have in your own backyard, which is so cool. And so, yeah, my husband and I, the first one we went to was Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. We stayed at
Nice.
Grand Hyatt Vale, which is a really beautiful property. And you had to get a permit at the time, and so yeah, we were like, hey, this is really cool, we really enjoyed this, let's keep going. And so yeah, in the first year, the national park pass that you buy, it's good for a year. I guess in the first year we did 18 national parks.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, so
Good for you.
incredible. It was really awesome. So they were all domestic trips, of course, and some of it involved flying into an airport and then renting a car and driving somewhere. But as you know, most of those places are fairly remote, that you have to drive and road trip, and so that was really quite a gift. We've seen some really amazing places. Some of the ones that stick out are Zion National Park, of course, is a lot of people know about that. We did the Utah Mighty 5, so all 5 parks in Utah. Also, cool. I went to your old stomping grounds. In Florida, we stayed in Miami and also went down to Key West. So there are 3 national parks there. So one of them is called Dry Tortugas, and the only way to get there is by boat or seaplane. It's like 2 hours outside of Key West. So that was really cool. It's like an old fort that's like abandoned and is now a national park. You can actually go camping out there, which was really cool. Yeah, I mean, so many beautiful places. So we're actually hoping to go to Yosemite this year. It's a pretty big one that some people are like, what, you haven't done that yet? But yeah, so that's hoping to keep that going, throughout, even though international travel has opened up. As you know, we got to go to Africa in October, which was
super cool.
Dream bucket list. Actually, I have some of the pictures that are printed out. Those are all the ones I took on safari in the Serengeti.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's travel, and like I mentioned, right, it's such a big part of how the seed, right, of why I got into this industry. It just it gives me so much joy to like experience new things, meet new people, and just like I don't know, there's something about it. And I always said, you know what? People always want to travel. Like you think about some industries that are no longer, or some things that become outdated, like RIP Blockbuster, like things like that, right?
Right.
But I'm like, travel will always be a thing, you know.
Well, you know, we'll evolve, and like we've seen our meetings industry kind of change and take a bit of a more virtual, you know,
Component.
virtual component to it, I guess. But you know, like you said, I don't think you're ever going to replace, even with VR nowadays. Some of our family members got some VR glasses and goggles, and that's super cool to think of what the potential is there. But I don't think you're ever going to replace getting on a plane, you know, putting your feet in dirt that's not your own dirt, and finding something around the world that you know, seeing with your own eyes. So no matter how many bumps and bruises I think we've suffered the last couple of years, I want to argue, and I've seen plenty of articles that testify to this, that travel is going to come back stronger than ever. You know, there's that concept of like revenge travel, right? And whether it be from a personal, really, like people are gonna be like, I'm gonna travel, damn it, whether you allow me to or not, right? There's this like they
Uh-huh.
want to get out
Heard of
and
that
see
term.
new things out. Yeah. You know, I don't want to beat a dead horse because we touched a few things on the pandemic, but you said a comment in here in the midst of what you're talking about that I want to go back to. You know, you said not being able to travel internationally forced you to examine the beauty of your backyard. And I think that's beautiful from a travel perspective. But talk about, you mentioned the word slowing down and how the pandemic forced you to refocus or pivot a little bit, which probably was the most overused word of 2020 and 2021, that word pivot. But there's something to be said for that. Tell me a personal learning you had, you know, as a driven person, as someone who is career oriented, who is a very hard worker, when things slowed down to the extent that they did, what was the beauty in your backyard from a personal standpoint that you were able to stop and notice perhaps that you weren't noticing before? Is that putting you on the spot too much, or do you think you have something that you could speak to about that?
You know, and it is just kind of what I had touched on before, where I got to pick up some hobbies that I maybe no longer had time for, that I always enjoyed doing, or kind of put to the forefront some of the things that I already were passionate about, like the foster dogs and the traveling, you know, kind of rotating to like road trip side as opposed to international travel. Like I got back into puzzles. Like I always love doing puzzles. And I like, I actually right here, this was like Christmas gifts that I got, like puzzles, right? And people know how much I love it. Like here's a Costco puzzle of a scene in Costco. I don't know if you've seen this. It's actually
I haven't. It's
hilarious,
insane.
and it was really fun to put together. Of course I did them both already, but you know, that's something that I got to spend a lot of time on, where I was listening to podcasts and just puzzling, where you just have your like you time. And yeah, like just a simple hobby like that. I think a really big thing I learned is kind of like you learn to reframe your
Mm.
mindset. You went from going go 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 to like literally everything screeched to a halt, and now we're back to go go go. And I'm sure it's been the same with you. And we've touched on this, how it really has bounced back. And just to go back a little bit to what you said, like yeah, absolutely, we've tried the virtual meetings, we've tried the hybrid, and it's a temporary solution, but there's I'm at least my personal belief, you cannot replace in-person meetings. You just can't. And we had, you know, this past IMEX had so much energy. There was something palpable in the air that everyone was so excited to get back to. And it was awesome. And you know, I got to see you in Orlando at your conference, and then I got to see you in Vegas again. Like it's just like that personal connection, that in-person meeting, even just a hello, or you grab a drink, or you're at like a meeting together, you're sitting together, general session, like whatever, right? It's irreplaceable. You can't replace that, right? And so like for me, with how, and coming back to how busy I had been lately, a new thing is actually, holy crap, like okay, now I barely have time for anything. The new mantra is, sometimes there are things outside your control, and that's kind of the overall theme, right? When everything slowed down,
Yeah.
you just you got to take it one day at a time. And it was very difficult for my personality type because I feel like I'm very type A. I'm very like to-do list oriented. I'm like, I need to stay on top of emails. At one point, it gave me so much anxiety because usually I'm able to keep my inbox to below 100 emails. I'm like really good at getting back to my clients. But then like when the floodgates opened was when all the vaccines started rolling out. From me, like May 2021, I would say onward was when I barely had a moment to breathe. And part of that is because I was the one holding down all of US and Canada. But, it just was like, holy crap. I had a client that said it was kind of like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. And I'm like, yeah, I've never heard of anything more accurate. And my emails got to, at one point, 820 something emails. And
Wow.
when it was at like 300, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Like, this is crazy. This is not me. I'm so sorry.
I can see you starting to shake right now. I can see, just even as you mentioned the word 800, like, you're starting to shake.
Yeah, see a little bit, right? Yeah, no, like, today, let me see, it's currently at 289. So still, like, not where I want to be. But like at one point I just thought, oh my gosh, like I cannot keep stressing about this. I cannot stay up till midnight every night to try and like get back to the clients, because at the end of the day, it's going to happen when it happens and they understand. And I think that's something that I can't remember who told me this. Honestly, it was at a trade show where someone was like, hey man, just tell them I need a week. I'm behind by a week. And when you tell them very honestly, like, this is what's going on, I have this XYZ going on, clients will understand. And I'm like, wow, okay. And so I started adopting the whole like, got your email, working on it, like give me a few days, I'm really behind on my emails. And that like really helped like my personal anxiety, but it really helped to get me into a new perspective of like, it's okay, it's going to be okay, we're going to take things a day at a time, and people have different struggles too, and you can only control what you can, and some you can't control, right? And that's okay.
Yeah. It's funny. I've heard this comment used in the context of death and when someone passes away, but they say, the hardest thing is after tragedy strikes is that life has to go on. And the best thing that can happen is that life has to go on. Like, there's something to be said for the perpetuity of life, that life's not going to end because we didn't get back to all the emails, today. Right. We realized through the pandemic, as tragic as it was for many people, not only from a health standpoint, but from an economic standpoint and from a job standpoint, there was all this kind of stress. And where it seemed like people's worlds were ending, that was tragic, right? There's the rebirth. There's ways that we can go forward and with new learnings, with ways. I love what you're talking about here, that, I think people are more realistically framing what is expected. I think people are putting less pressure on the day-to-day activity and taking more time to focus in on a simple hobby, to focus in on something that might bring a little bit more joy to their life. I was just reading an Instagram post not too long ago, and it had 20 tips to kind of lead a stressless life or something like that. I forgot exactly what the headline was. Yeah, I'm going to forward it to you. It's amazing. But the thing about it was none of these things were revolutionary. It was like, take a walk, get a hobby, breathe. Learn how to breathe your tech, like simple things. And the more you think about how complex life is, the more you realize that some of the better learnings are in the simple things that don't really take much. And I think sometimes those simple things get lost in the shuffle when we have so much on our plate that we're just trying to keep life as we know it going forward in this, at the momentum that we've always known it. I think the pandemic for me, is as horrible as it was in many ways, brought me a lot of learnings that I wouldn't replace. I'm really glad. I've always been on this path of trying to find, less is more, and, find my own path and not have anyone dictate my life. But I think more than ever after the pandemic, this is taking time for those simple things and refocusing on some habits is key.
I could not agree with you more. Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about goals for 2022. Like now that we're shifting out of the pandemic, I mean, we just had we're still in the midst, I would say, of an Omicron variant that is wreaking havoc on events and meetings. And I'm hoping this is the last gasp of COVID here. But as we look towards 2022, what are some goals you have professionally and personally that you could share?
I mean, keep going for one, right? And this is something that if you had told me in February 2020, March 2020, that come February, March 2022, we would still be talking about this. I mean, holy moly. And that's to say, I know we've touched on this, is we pivot. And this is, we need to learn to live with this thing. And we really, as an industry, it's really crazy. The resiliency is just astounding. And it's great because we found ways to get together, to meet. There are safe practices in place that we can do to make this happen. And variants are going to come and go, and I really do hope that this one will pass quickly. And I think that looking forward, the best, I guess, I don't know if it's really more like strategy or just anything like that, but really just treat every group as you would like to be treated as well. And this is something that I've been really proud of through this entire pandemic, is we've been extremely flexible, like really, really flexible. When a client comes to me and says, hey, like, what are my options? I'm really afraid to meet here. First I educate them on what is truthfully happening in the destination, because some of the, for a lot of people, they don't really know, hey, does Mexico have any restrictions? And the answer is no. Actually, it's on the US side. When you come back and test, like, that's an example where some people just kind of assume, oh, what, maybe I have to get a PCR test to get down there, like things like that. Like, if you don't know, you don't know, right? And so we go through the steps, and I say, well, contractually, this is what we've got. However, we definitely want to work with you on this. And I can tell you, like, 9 out of 10 of my groups we were able to keep them and able to move them to future years, because at the end of the day, they chose our hotel for a reason. They chose to work with us for a reason. And it's about postponing, not canceling, right? And that was like the mantra of the pandemic, and this is still very much so today. And right now I'm in a weird situation. I know I kind of mentioned this too as well, but I'm kind of seeing some groups still panicking a little bit, wanting to cancel or postpone. And I am still, like, just this week, I just had a call with a client that wanted to move out of April 2022. And then yesterday I sent 2 contracts for April 2022. So wow. We're in the 3-month booking window here, and we have groups that are like, really flighty. And we have ones that are like, please get my dates. I want this now. I'm ready to come. Right. And it's just weird. It's at the same time, again, we pivot, we offer whatever, we say, whenever you're ready, we are here for you. And we just treat every single client with care. I mean, care is a really big theme within Hyatt, for sure. We the motto is like, care for people so they can be their best. But truly, it's a simple, like, life motto as well. And that's why it's easy for it to translate. And so the goal is to keep booking business, of course, keep retaining business, of course. If it's ever not a good fit, then of course we'll proceed together case by case. But it's just keep your head up and one day at a time, I think. And that's really, I don't know, it's work for me to kind of goose Raba a little bit with the email inbox volume, but certainly.
But I'll tell you what though, Chelsea, you key in on a couple of things. I think first of all, you highlight so perfectly the schizophrenia that we're seeing in the industry right now. You have people who are aggressively traveling, and you have people who are super scared and are mitigating risk and trying not to expose people. And I don't know that one solution is right or wrong. And I think that there's a certain confidence level I think you have to have with your clients, and for your clients to feel comfortable traveling. Some people have it, some people don't. So the second thing I think you highlight is your flexibility through it. I can tell you from a client side of things, and as someone who's looking to broker deals between hotels and clients, that flexibility is crucial. And part of the reason why we're talking here and why I think we established such a good relationship is because you were rolling up your sleeves with us. You represented the hotel solidly. You weren't giving everything away, but you were really concerned about what the client needed. And I think those kind of conversations, especially in such a schizophrenic market, are critical. I think that's where you have needs, we have needs. How do we get to those needs together? How do we keep you whole as much as possible while still doing justice and honor people's requests without exposing people's health? I mean, at the end of the day, money's money, but if people feel like they're going to be risking their health to have a meeting, who wants to move forward under those terms? What kind of people are we if we're forcing people to meet in those situations, right? So learning to read your clients, learning to negotiate through that from a reasonable standpoint. I give kudos to you and your efforts at the hotel. And I think it's a lesson that a lot of hoteliers could learn, because there are some hotels that they're looking at bottom lines. They see your group as a number. And if that number leaves, and they're not going to make their bottom lines, and it doesn't matter any of the other, peripheral stuff that's going on with this group, they see it as a number. And that can be dangerous. And then at the same time, I think you have hotels who's, or partners who just, oh, we'll let you go without really giving much care for it. And so somewhere in the middle is a balance of really paying attention to what the client needs, and finding middle ground between client and hotel. That's critical.
That like I had learned that it's not a one size fit all, because at first it was like, okay, what's our party line? Like what's our like stance that every time a client wants to move, what do we do? And it's like, no, it's not like, not every group wants to actually cancel and get it out off the books. Like sometimes it's just a matter of scooting it forward. Sometimes a credit makes better with their internal decision process might look different. Sometimes they can only plan 6 months out. Like it just really depends. And sometimes they don't need to cancel. They just, have to move it here or there for one reason or another with their fiscal year or their teams. Like sometimes I have groups that have international attendees where literally they cannot come because of their country's ban, right? And it just truly depends. And so yeah, case by case basis for sure. And feel like we're getting really good at like identifying, okay, what is it that you need and how can we help you, and how to move forward from there. For sure. Yeah. And at the end of the day, the relationship is the most important part. Absolutely. So I mean, from our perspective anyway.
Well, you're demonstrating why you're so good at what you do, Chelsea. I think you're hitting on a lot of key points that I think a lot of folks in the industry can learn from. We're talking about taking care of clients. We're talking about how to best serve them. To walk me through what a good client looks like, and maybe share with an experience of what a perfect, or maybe a really solid experience with a client. What does that look like for you?
I mean, it's, for obviously first comes to mind, you are a fantastic partner to work with. I'm not just saying
I'm not fishing for compliments here, Chelsea. I'm not fishing for compliments.
No, I mean, truly it's someone, and here's the thing, right? When you've been in the industry as long as we have, it kind of, you groups blur together, but it's like that old saying where like you don't necessarily remember what was said, but you remember how they make you feel, right? And so it's those clients that get it, that just absolutely get it, and that you're absolutely in that category where if something goes awry, they are able to see the big picture side of, okay, this is the challenge that's on the hotel, or this is the challenge that's on the vendor that they're trying to make it work. Like whatever it is, that they understand that not everything is just like, okay, this is the hotel's fault, or this is, I'm blaming someone else on this, right? And so those are the clients that make our lives easier. Of course, like that professionalism and being cordial, like that should go without saying. You should hope, right?
You would hope. It's less, it's less evident these days, unfortunately, but yes, that you would hope that cordiality is the base for most of our communications.
You would hope, yeah. And just know that, like we're people at the end of the day. Like I'm doing my best for you as your hotel sales manager, like as your kind of like, I'm advocating for both of you here. Like I'm advocating for my client, and I'm also trying to see what's best for the hotel and finding that middle ground. So yeah, I mean, what makes a great client, of course, being communicative and responsive, and the more they tell me, the more I understand how I can help them, right? And yeah, I mean, we have, fortunately, I would say majority of my clients are great in terms of like, we don't truly have any like major issues that go down. So it's, it makes it enjoyable to keep doing business and keep doing what we do. Of course, I'm fortunate that I sell a really fabulous destination and property and everything that, people are excited to get down to the beaches of Playa del Carmen. Like that's great. That makes it a little easier, but certainly yeah, just being a good partner, like talk to someone how you'd want to be talked to, and that's as simple as that.
Amazing. Tell me, what's one of the best compliments you've ever received in your job, or that you've walked somebody through, they've had an amazing experience and they paid you a compliment. What would you say that would be?
Personally, and again, this just comes to mind, of course, because we're talking, but Jeremy, you sent a letter to my regional vice president and copied like everyone's bosses, like down the chain here. Like I think like Trina and Chris Finelli, like everybody was on that email regarding this really challenging group that we had gone through together. And mind you, this group is one we've pushed from year to year. We had lots of challenges where from the client perspective, they changed multiple planners on us, which as you know, from an operations perspective is like, holy moly, really difficult. And then also we had to deal with COVID, you know, on our side, on top of everything else. And I mean, it just, the event still went off without a hitch. And I got, what did we do? Like 150% pickup of the block. It was like, just, you know, out the park, which was incredible. And you took it upon yourself, like you didn't even tell me you were doing this, to email my director, my GM, like everybody, to give a moment to say thanks. And you like complimented me, which is awesome, but you also took the time to thank my event manager that was handling this, like the staff members. You threw in some specific names in there like that. I wanted to like frame it. It was incredible. It was so amazing, you know, like that made me so happy, and it was like fuel for the rest of the like month, that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I'm like on cloud nine. So that was an example that first thing I thought of, really such a nice compliment. And it's simple that, and I don't know how long it took for you to do that letter, but you would think that it's a simple gesture saying, hey, listen, like we had challenges, but these people made it awesome, and thank you. Right. And I'm just like, wow. And some of them had responded to me separately and was like, great job, like really good job. And it's nice to be noticed by the people in, you know, position of power and, you know, your career trajectory. And also in person, we were at ATM, and I think you kind of pulled the same thing. And, you know, and I think at one point you were like, oh, we're all going to be working for her one day. Like something as, you know, silly and playful as that, just like it really goes a long way. It really does. So thank you for always making me look good to my bosses. So.
Well, let me correct that. I don't make you look good. You make yourself look good. I simply pointed out when you've done a solid job, and when you've you know, you've come through for mutual clients. I think that it goes a long way. And you know, I appreciate. People are going to think I set up this podcast to get some compliments here. That's not why. That's not why I'm doing this. I appreciate you saying that. I just think it you know, it goes to show the impact and power that just simple recognition can have. And you know, look, I know what it's like to receive those kind of messages too, and I think you just want to pay them forward. But like I said, you don't need any help making yourself look good. The fact that I highlighted it and pointed it out to people who you know, are in your sphere is something that it was kind of a natural extension of the job you had done. So thank you for that. Tell me about, we'll shift over to learnings here and we'll close it up. But we, you know, we mentioned it already, or, you know, the pandemic has turned our industry upside down. I think there's constant things. I'm an industry vet for now 22 years, which is almost hard to believe. The gray hairs on my chin are starting to tell a story here. I wonder, you know, I've had to learn a lot of new things. You think you're an industry vet, you think you know a lot of things, and you go back to square one on some things where our industry is shifting and changing. So what do you do to stay? I'm a big fan of podcasts, of reading, not just about the industry, but in general. What do you do to keep yourself informed, and how do you stay on top of things? How do you, you know, for anyone listening, what would be something you'd recommend to say, hey, you got to check this out? You know, I get a lot out of it.
Okay, so I mean, really part of it, you stay in the know by just being in the thick of it, right? Working with clients, and of course you follow the news. You want to be in tune with what's going on with not only regulations, and obviously everything's very COVID influenced these days. You know, for my destination, you know, I'm always monitoring what's going on with our traffic light system and things like that. Just being in the know, because when there are things that come up, the clients are going to come to you and say, hey, what's going on? What does this mean? And you want to be informed, right? But no, I am a big fan of podcasts. Unfortunately, they're all true crime and have nothing to do with our industry.
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to know how not to murder somebody. That's important.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, hence my Insta handle. That's what they're like. What do you mean the serial Foster? It's kind of like a punny play on serial killer, but also like I do foster one after the other. So I mean, just a little nod to that. But yeah, I mean, and just overall, like it's interesting. So I think back to when I was a sales admin at the Manchester Grand Hyatt San Diego many years ago. I had a manager tell me that this was kind of a tip, basically, like what we do is not life and death. And I think she could tell at that point I was like stressed about preparing a site visit for her. We were gonna have like a plane fly by and like whatever. Like there were all these logistics, and she could tell that like I was kind of wanting to stay on top of everything. And she's like, listen, it's okay if you don't respond to something like right away, but what we do is not life and death. Like do what you can for the clients, but you gotta like take care of yourself first. And that has really come back a lot during the pandemic, where I'm like, wow, this is so true. And I passed it on to a lot of my admins now. Like I tell my sales admin that all the time. And I say, don't worry, girl, like get to this tomorrow, get to this next week. When you can, you need to take care of yourself first and foremost. And that's I mean, I think that's something that, you know, like we as a society are pivoting to, like your personal wellness, like that work-life balance, like these are all very important, like mental health, like these things need to come first, otherwise you can't do your job. So, you know, that's certainly something, a big lesson that I've learned, and it really does translate into your professional life, is sometimes you just got to take a breather and say, okay. And like I said, what I learned is you just say, hey, I'll get back to you in a few days, right? And that has been a really big help for me, I would say.
I think I was going to ask you for final thoughts, and I'm not going to take that away from you, but I can't think of a better way to end than what you just said. You know, refocusing, taking care of yourself, personal wellness. Business will be there. Business can wait. If you're not well here, if you're not well here, what's the point of all the emails, right? It should be after you taking care of yourself that you take care of others. Just like they say in your airline announcements, right? Put your own oxygen mask on before you're able to help others around you, right?
That's right.
But I think that's an awesome way to close. Chelsea, give me any other things that come to mind that you might want to close with. But I mean, I see that as the perfect exit there. But I don't want to steal your thunder if you had any other thoughts you wanted to share before we close it down.
No, not at all. I think that, like you said, if you wanted to, you know, kind of wrap that up there, that would be fantastic. I want to thank you so much for having me on our little coffee chat here. And it's truly like partners like you that make it like you see the true value of what you're doing. It's not just responding to RFPs and hitting send and moving on to the next thing, right? Like there's more substance, and those are the relationships that you build. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, like on a personal level, like adopt, don't shop, and yeah, check out the Insta, right? And no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, and if you anybody have any questions about Playa del Carmen, about Grand Hyatt specifically, I am your person. If you are based in the West Coast, I have a colleague handling East Coast, but feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any and all questions anybody might have regarding really anything. I'm always open to chat.
Amazing. Chelsea, it's been a few months since I've done one of these. I could not think of a better person to relaunch into these Coffee with Colleague chats. It's been a delight talking to you. The serial foster, the Grand Hyatt Playa del Carmen, really anything Hyatt related. If you can start with Chelsea, she'll get you to the right person. You are a dear. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me on Coffee with Colleagues.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Okay.